putting that aside, let's focus on a few other things coming out of this. One was just, I read this. This is really cool about the development of the MOPE, the development of the bunker buster bomb, and how it came to be. And I think this is just a good example of thinking. It's a good example of people in the Pentagon, risk awareness, and the real having kind of observing what's going on in the world and having a strategy. So how did we get to Operation Midnight Hammer, right? Well, really, the planning for this has been going on for 15 years. So here's some details of this. In 2009, U.S. intelligence officer was shown a secret nuclear facility hidden deep inside the Iranian mountains. This is photo. So I don't know exactly what it means that he was shown. Was he taken there? But U.S. intelligence had good reason to believe that there was this nuclear facility deep inside the mountains, and American and Israeli intelligence have since then been accumulating information about it, about its function, about its exact location. It's about its structure internally, depth, the whole thing, what's inside, the centrifuges, all of that. Over the following 15 years, the intelligence agencies in the United States, with I'm sure a lot of input from the Israelis, have been analyzing everything, right? They studied the geology of the place. They studied the ventilation systems, the construction methods, and of course the equipment that was inside to see what the weak points are. And it became very clear very quickly, and really just from the fact that it was in the mountains deep, that this was not a facility that was intent for, a peaceful research or some kind of peaceful activity, that this had to do with Iran's nuclear program. In 2009, and for many years later, the United States had no weapon that could reach that kind of depth. They had no weapon that could actually take out a facility like this, which surprises me. That surprises me. You would think that thinking about how to destroy deep bunkers is not just a problem in Iran, but a problem in China and a problem in Russia and a problem elsewhere. So you would have thought the Pentagon would have had something, but they did not, according to what I'm reading. And as a consequence, basically, in the U.S. intelligence community, working with the Pentagon, basically help develop and the what is called the GBU 57, this MOPE, and the weapon, the bomb, right? It's designed specifically, almost, right? Specifically to go after this particular target, the four-door bunkers. That was its purpose. Now, of course, it's got much wider purposes because it could go into any fortification underground. But this was the motivation. This was like the design requirements, was to be able to destroy this facility. This, again, only reaffirms kind of my belief that they actually achieved this, right? These were the weapons explicitly designed for this. It's hard to believe they failed. These are really good. They know what they're doing, right? So in June, and of course, they did it. They used this weapon on this target. So you see here a kind of a discovery of a new threat and a design of a weapon to deal with that threat. And then proof of concept, use of that weapon in order to destroy the threat. And maybe we won't know for another few years of how thoroughly the target was destroyed and how good the weapon actually landed up being. But there is no, this is the kind of thinking that you need to do and you need to commit to when you're doing strategic military defense. What are the threats? What are the threats, right? Now, add to this the fact that in 2018, when the Mossad basically literally stole, a copy of all of the Iranian nuclear archive. They basically went in and photographed the entire Iranian nuclear archive in one of the most stunning, amazing, ridiculous intelligence, successes ever. Part of that included photo blueprints. So, the U.S., the Pentagon didn't have to guess as to what are the weak spots, where the areas, where's the ventilation shaft, where the centrifuges, where should we hit. They had the blueprints, the construction blueprints of it. So, there's, and I'm sure this, of course, helped in everything. But the fact that Israel could get those blueprints is another one of those amazing intelligence successes that they have. So 15 years they worked on this. And I'm sure there are a lot of people in the American intelligence community, a lot of people at the Pentagon, a lot of the people at the arms procurement side that are super excited about the deployment of the GBU-57, super excited to see how it worked and how they, and the level of success. So it's an exciting project. And generally exciting. Again, I read a story today that the Chinese, that basically Xi is very worried about this. The existence of this weapon, which everybody had known about, but nobody had seen in action, and the precision here is super stunning, as we talked about, I think yesterday. Anyway, the Chinese are worried. Xi is basically asked for a strategic review of the entire kind of the Chinese defense program and kind of what would happen if they invaded Taiwan and what they could expect from an American response. Their worries are twofold: the ability of the B-2s to kind of fake them out and get to where they got. And maybe the fake out over Guam was targeted at the Chinese more than it was targeted at the Iranians. But the fact that they seemed to be faked out, the fact that the B-2s could travel undetected such a vast distance with a cadre of fighter pilots, fighter planes. There were many F-35s and F-22s with them. But of course, the F-35, the F-22, the B-2, they're all stealth. Very difficult to locate. Now, supposedly, China has a radar that can detect stealth planes. Can they? Do we know that? And then, the capability of the bomb and what implications does that have for Chinese defense strategy? So the Chinese are a little concerned here. This is shaking them up a little bit, as I expected it would. Look, the best thing in defense of Taiwan, the thing which would cause the Chinese really not to invade Taiwan, would be the more America, and by proxy Israel, show off the capabilities of American weapon systems and show off the willingness to use them, the more likely it is that China just doesn't engage. The risk is too high. I mean, the one thing Xi cannot afford, China cannot afford, is to go after Taiwan and lose. That just is not going to happen, right? Because that would completely undermine them internally, and that's the thing they fear the most. They fear more than anything a rebellion among their own people. And here again, not getting regime change in Iran. I mean, imagine if the Iranian regime, if we'd sustained the pressure and the Iranian regime had fallen, that would have scared the bejesus out of the Chinese. That would have sent a clear message to Chinese, Yeah, well, we shouldn't do it. We're not going to take this risk. It's too risky. We can't go there. And I think we still scare them a little bit, but nowhere near as much as we could have if we just held on for another 2 weeks. If Trump had just shut his mouth for about 2 weeks to let this go. Now, supposedly there's a big peace deal that's going to be negotiated. Supposedly Netanyahu is coming to D.C. and they're going to negotiate the addition of Syria into the Abraham Accords. They're going to negotiate an end to the war in Gaza, which includes the release of all the hostages. And supposedly this is all going to be done in the next few days, weeks, and we will have kumbaya and peace in the Middle East. We can all hope that is true, and maybe they didn't need to continue bombing Iran, and maybe the Iranian regime will fall anyway. But that's a lot of hoping, whereas a little bit more sustained bombing for 2 more weeks might have generated it for certain. For certain. Supreme Leader not coming. Supreme Leader, no talks. Supposedly the talks scheduled with the Iranians, but the Iranians are saying, no, we're not going to any talks. We don't want to talk to the Americans. We're not interested in a deal. We won, the Iranians are saying. People can be evasive and delusional, engage in evasion and be delusional for a very, 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 very long time. And as long as the people who know the truth let them get away with it, there are very little consequences that happen to them. Yesterday somebody said, the Mossad is on the ground in Iran, and they're still active. And I said, I don't know. I haven't heard anything. And then in the evening, I saw a story about an apartment that blew up in the center of Tehran. Supposedly a drone hit, but it was unclear how it blew up. There was a bomb inside, or a drone hit it and blew up. And the rumor was that 2 Iranian Revolutionary Guard senior people within their apartment when it blew up, together with another nuclear scientist. So if that is true, and again, hard to tell, but if that is true, that is the Mossad in Tehran continuing to knock off. And we'll get to a minute to the new Israeli defense doctrine. There is a new Israeli defense doctrine we'll get to in a minute. First, we've got some data now on how well Israeli air defense systems did during this war. So we now have the exact stats, or at least based on Channel 12 in Israel. I think they aggregated the stats of how many launches they were, how many reached Israel, and how many reached the ground. And so this is interesting. This gives you a sense of how well the Israeli air defense system worked. And you have to say, pretty amazingly now, this also involved the U.S., or at least U.S. air defense batteries in the United States, the THAAD system. I don't have a breakdown between THAAD and Arrow. That would be interesting. I think that is going to be important for Israel's ability to sell the Arrow system to other countries, is being able to differentiate it from the Patriot and the THAAD system that the United States sells, to see and see if it has a comparative advantage. Anyway, here's the data. So Iran launched 631 missiles. Now, 500 missiles actually reached what you would call Israeli airspace. So they reached above Israel. Could be in basically in space above Israel, but above Israel, right? Now, on 243 of these, there was no interception attempt. So Israel didn't even try to intercept because they were heading to open ground. So they just let them fall in open areas. Air defenses tried to shoot down 257 missiles. Of those, 221 were intercepted. 36 missiles actually hit populated areas. And we know the number of dead, 30-something, I think, and a couple of hundred wounded. So first, think 36 missiles actually hit. Imagine if 500 missiles had hit. Imagine if all the ones, or let's say not 500 because 243 were heading towards open areas. Imagine if 257 had hit, and you get dramatically higher casualty numbers. So it is pretty amazing. So the interception rate was 86%, a little lower than what I was telling you as the missiles were coming in. It appeared at that point to be closer to 90%, or to be 90%, but 86 and 90, it's pretty close. Overall, this is an amazing interception rate. Remember, you've got these ballistic missiles entering into the atmosphere at unbelievable speeds, several times the speed of sound, and depending on the missiles. And they're relatively small. I mean, they're big when you stand next to it, but they're relatively small as an object flying through space. And then you have to send another object at it and hit it, as it's traveling at that kind of speed. The Iranians constantly were adjusting their strategy in terms of how to get as many through. This is why the Israelis would try to tell people don't give locations of where the hits were and so on, trying to find weak spots. It seems like Beersheba in the south of Israel was a weak spot. And they were using different rocket types. So while you could train your system on one rocket type, then they would shift to a different rocket type that has different characteristics, they could sneak more through. And yet, Israel shot down 86% of the rockets, which is an astoundingly good ratio. The Ukrainians would love something like this. By the way, when it comes to drones, Israel had a 99.9% rate of destruction of 1,000 drones that the Iranians sent Israel away. Only one hit. So quite an astounding performance by the Israeli air defense system and the American air defense system. I mean, it would be interesting to find out how many of these were shot down by Americans. And with the drones, it sounds like a lot of companies participated in shooting them down. France acknowledged that they shot down some drones that flew over, I guess, bases that they have in the Middle East. The Americans, the Jordanians, the Brits, I don't know if the Saudis did, but certainly Jordanians did, and then, of course, Israel did. So the shooting down of drones. And again, I think what this says to Putin, for example, what it says to Putin is, if he was at war with NATO, he'd be crushed. He'd just be crushed. I mean, think about all the drones he sends into Ukraine, and they would all be downed. Think about the fact that if NATO was participating in this war with F-35s, F-22s, B-2 bombers, they would have control of the skies. I don't care how sophisticated Russian air defense systems are. Israel has shown that those can be taken out. And yes, the more advanced ones are more sophisticated, but I think one of the reasons Russia never deployed the most sophisticated ones in the Middle East is because they were afraid that Israel would show how those could be taken out as well. So this has to cause Russia to second guess its strategy and whether it wants to go to war with NATO. Has to cause China to second guess its strategy and whether it wants to go to war with the United States and whether it has capacities. I mean, I think just before this war, the general sense was, oh no, China would win because they manufactured thousands of drones and they could win everything just with drones. But air superiority changes the entire calculus. And the real question is, can Chinese planes match up with American planes? Can Chinese air defense systems match up with American air defense systems? If Taiwan buys Israeli air defense systems, and I don't know that they do, but I assume they're thinking of it, then what does that do to Imagine if Taiwan builds its own Iron Dome based on Israeli technology and its own air defense, longer range air defense system, and basically does, invests in trying to protect itself from all these projectiles that China could send its way. Now, China can send a lot more projectiles than Iran can. But if you have a good air defense system and you have enough missiles, now supposedly Israel was getting close to depleting its missiles for the air defense, and the United States depleted somewhere between 15 to 20% of their entire stock of missiles, of air defense missiles for the THAAD. So this was very costly. Might have cost the United States several hundreds of millions of dollars to help defend Israeli airspace. I would be interested if ever we find out how many of the hits the Arrow system was responsible for and how many of the hits were responsible, the THAAD system was responsible for. I'm interested in the relative efficaciousness of the two air defense systems. All right, finally, on the Middle East, last point on the Middle East, and then we'll go on. Israel basically has articulated what I would consider a new strategic defense doctrine. It hasn't been articulated in great detail, but it seems it doesn't need to. So this is from Defense Minister Israel Katz, and this is what he said. He says, "I've instructed the IDF to prepare an enforcement plan against Iran that includes maintaining Israel's air superiority, preventing nuclear advancement and missile production, and responding to Iran's support for terrorist activity against the State of Israel. We will act consistently to thwart such threats. I suggest the toothless snakehead in Tehran understand and beware. Operation Rising Lion was just a trailer for a new Israeli policy. After October 7th, immunity is over." Now, I like this. This is basically a proactive, preventive, offensive strategy. It basically, what's articulated here is, you buy new air defense systems, we'll come and we'll destroy them. You build a factory to produce ballistic missiles, we'll bomb it to shreds. You buy new centrifuges and you try to, install them in some new facility. We'll destroy the centrifuges, we'll destroy the new facility. We will proactively stop you from building missiles, from building a nuclear bomb, and from gaining air defense systems. We will keep you naked so that we can come in and bomb anything we want. Now, this is really amazing, right? This is really amazing. Israel's never done this really with anybody. It didn't do it with Hamas when Hamas was building tunnels all over the place and getting weapons in from Egypt, which Israel let them, knew about and let it happen. Israel didn't do it with Hezbollah. As Hezbollah was building tunnels, building huge complexes of weapons and arms and bases for soldiers and everything along the Israeli border. And it hasn't done it with Iran for the last 30 years as Iran has been building these capabilities. Now it's saying it will. Now, saying it will is easier than actually doing it. But, we'll be watching, right? But this is a great first step, articulating a strategy. I think that this is a strategy that no matter which government, is going to be in Israel, is going to at least give this strategy lip service. I think just like the opposition supported this war with Iran, I think they would support this. Whether the next prime minister or future prime ministers have the balls to do it is a different question. But this is exciting. It's a new strategic era, really, in Israel. I think the new strategic era really started in Lebanon with Hezbollah, the proactive taking them out, the beepers, the taking Nasrallah out in this bunker, and now even just yesterday, Israel bombed. They discovered supposedly a new store of missiles in southern Lebanon, and they just blew it up. They just blew it up. They didn't wait for provocation. They didn't wait for the international community. They didn't wait to get permission from the Lebanese government. They just blew it up. They took it out. And I think if Israel continues doing that, that is, Hezbollah, gets its generals together to try to plan something, and Israel bombs the bunker. And they try to smuggle in new weapons, and Israel bombs the new weapons. If it does that on a systematic basis, and then if it goes to the head of the snake, consistently, systematically, unapologetically, then it'll basically, it's the Iranian regime will have nothing, and will never be a threat to Israel again.